Raja.
Mr. Howard, how are you, sir?
Do you realize the last time we spoke was 1999 at the Never Been Kissed TV junket? It's been
Oh
that
my gosh.
long.
Wow.
I was
Wow.
looking back through my paraphernalia, my everything, and I was like, that was 1999 we last spoke. I never got to speak to any of the Scooby-Doo movies. You
Well,
know,
somehow you haven't aged, but I have aged greatly.
you look fantastic. You look great. Thank you for talking to me today about Gun in a Hotel Bible. I enjoyed it immensely.
Well,
For
that makes me very happy. Thank you. It's a challenging movie, and maybe not for everyone, but for those that take the risk, there are definite rewards there.
well, I felt like it was Inherit the Wind in a hotel room. That's how. Yeah, because I follow I've seen that movie 100 times, and a lot of my arguments, I have to say right up front, I come from Assembly of God, grew up Protestant, and my dad was one of the founders of Oral Roberts University.
Wow.
Both my
Wow.
grandmothers had their own church. My brother was a deacon, also on the board at ORU. So I come from a very religious background, but
Yeah,
Christopher Hitchens.
I want to say, so sorry to interrupt. I believe that Alicia went to Oral Roberts, our co-director.
No kidding.
I
Wow.
think
Well,
so.
Howard Auditorium, we have a building there,
There
so,
you go. Well, that's
but
fantastic.
I kind of subscribe to Christopher Hitchens nowadays, so after I went to college and met some liberal professors, I kind of, became the black sheep of the family, but I'm very spiritual. But yeah, this film of yours really spoke to me today. And also, like Bill Maher, he calls the Bible the big book of Jewish fairy tales. And what other things do we subscribe to in the Bronze Age? And so I follow his philosophy of God being real. I don't know. And you mentioned that in the film too. So
Well, I mean, there's the brilliant thing about the movie, I should say that the play and the writing is that there's a voice for everyone in this movie.
yeah, it shows both ends of it. And how long has your son Bradley been a heathen?
Most of his life, I suppose. No, to be honest, they both wrote both parts. It wasn't like Bradley just wrote Pete and Daniel just wrote Gid. I mean, they both wrote for both characters, and some of that sort of heathen stuff. Those some of those more incendiary things he says to Gid allows Gid to make these really beautiful counter arguments. And so, without the Pete as a foil, Gid would have no reason to say those sort of lovely things and faith affirming things. So that's the give and take of good drama.
It's such a creative way to have a debate about morality and the relevance of the Bible by having Pete, who's a human being with flaws, and Gideon being a hotel Bible. I mean, I thought it was such a really creative way. It also reminded me of Devil and Daniel Webster, just about talking about, back and forth like that. And I love how no one is taking the Bible out, taking Gideon out since the Reagan years. So he's been staying, every hotel I've stayed in, there's a Gideon Bible, right? Especially in Los Angeles and downtown LA.
Sure.
And so this really, of course, comes off as a one-act play. So tell me, as a director, the blocking and the coverage for something like that, because instead of, like, in some scenes you leave the camera where you can have, you don't cut anywhere, but sometimes you do some really creative stuff. So how did you figure out the blocking for this?
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you for noticing and appreciating. Look, the play came to me fully formed. It was a play, and so, like, the blocking was there, the acting was amazing, the writing was perfect, and so, like, from a director's standpoint, it's probably the easiest gig I've ever had, because it's like, oh, I just have to shoot this. And so for me, the approach was to have the camera work kind of mimic the staging of the play, where these two characters are sort of at opposite corners and they're sizing each other up, and then they'll sort of mix it up for a while, then go back to their corners, and so choreographing the camera work to sort of go along with those rhythms was kind of the fun of it. And the actors were just so incredible. They could, like, okay, we're going to start at line 35, and they could say, good, let's go, and they just drop it into a 7-minute take, 8-minute take. It was just spot on. And so just to be able to do those sort of long takes and one shot things was really a treat, honestly.
And the dynamic between the two characters, and it's amazing how Pete, he's so serious, and then the levity that Daniel brings, you know. So I
Yeah,
just love that going back and forth, because it's just, and their timing on this was so, you know, these guys have rehearsed it or performed this many times, because you listen to the rhythm that they have going down. It's like they're having these real conversations.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they start diametrically opposed in their viewpoints, but they bond as they go, and even in disagreement, they bond. And those sort of lighter moments that you're talking about were sort of part of it. I think that they worked really hard to get that sort of humor in there, and the audience always responded to it. And so it's sort of it's the spoons full of sugar that helps the medicine go down, I suppose. And it just felt like two real people, even though one isn't even a person. He's a book, but there's a sense of reality about it where you could be in that conversation. You've heard that conversation.
And as someone who's a theater geek who had high school drama and also drama in college, and then also I was a drama competition judge after that too for
Wow.
many years. So I just kept seeing in this, wow, that's a great monologue. Oh, take something there, you know, something you can perform at competitions or in class. So I just think this is such a great, well-written one act that you could really draw upon that if you want something to audition for.
That's up to the guys. They actually still control the rights to the play, and I'm sure that if enough people ask, that they'll publish it and put it out there, because yeah, we all would like to sort of see it live on as a play as well as a movie.
And tell me about choosing the Hotel Rosalind. Isn't that a classic LA hotel?
Um, I don't know if you call it classic. It's definitely been there. There's some beautiful buildings of that era down there, and you know, the show takes place in Chicago, and you know, it was originally written to sort of be a sort of a more of a motel kind of out on the outskirts of town. But we just decided to make it sort of a downtown Chicago piece, um, and honestly, the 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 hotel just looked perfect. We found a corner room that sort of matched our set, and so it was nothing beyond the normal production decision of, oh, that looks great, that'll work. You know, there was no sort of a second layer behind behind that decision.
And finally, after the philosophical debate about religion and man, I love how you have the ending music over the credits was very angelic.
Oh, the music, yeah. Ed Smart did an amazing job on the music. You know, the music was diff- a difficult, not difficult. It was different in this movie. Normally, in a movie, the music starts and something gets going, and then it plays to this. And when the movie ends, you're on, or when the music ends, you're on to the next scene. But you know, we're never on to the next scene. We're always in the same room. So how the music sort of comes in and goes and takes the audience through those moments, and where there is music and where we choose not to have music, that was all a really interesting puzzle. And I think that Ed Smart just did a really nice job. That it never sort of, you know, it never dominates. You never sort of sense it stopping and starting. It just is part of the words and part of the piece and part of the room.
Well, it's encouraging to see that you know, your son is following in your footsteps, and he's got a great career ahead of him. I enjoyed it immensely, and let's not take 22 years to talk again. We got to talk
I
again sooner.
appreciate that very much. Thank you. I'm really glad you enjoyed the movie, and I'm really glad that you came at it from the place you did, and we hope that everyone else can enjoy it that way too. It's really, you know, it's really meant to be a conversation starter, and the reason we even made it into a movie was, you know, we see people gather on the sidewalks after the play, and they weren't talking about where to go to dinner. They were talking about like, when he said that and he said that, and so it's kind of a movie that opens up conversation that you would never have conversations about, like at the water cooler, or maybe even with intimate loved ones. You'd
it's
never say,
it's it's a
how do you feel
conversation that
about this?
it's a conversation you can have with younger people, because I've learned in my life that people who believe in their religion and believe in what they believe, there's nothing you can say that's going to change their mind. You know, like I said, like I watch Inherit the Wind, and you know, there was Cain and Abel, and you know,
Yeah,
Adam and Eve, and he killed Cain, killed Abel, and then it's the next passage, he went out to the land of Nod and met his wife.
yeah.
Where does she come from? You know, so it's like you can't, and killing your
But I think
adulterer,
what
you
my
know.
counter argument to that would be, this film isn't about trying to change anyone's mind. It's just the ability to have that conversation, to
Right,
ask
right.
those hard questions, and to not demonize the person who's asking them. And so it's really, it's a movie about having those sort of
Two
hard
points of view.
conversations. And
Yeah, yeah.
for the audience, I think that,
Right.
you know, who would ever think to ask, you know, their wife, well, how do you feel about that sort of biblical thing? And so we hope that it's a real sort of an invitation for people to dig into those subjects that may otherwise be taboo.
Let's just say it's a conversation starter, which I love it. I really do. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, and come visit us in Las Vegas when it's safe. We'd love to have you.
I would love to. Thank you, Jeffrey.
You bet. Take care. Thank you.